Alright, you guys, got a new game running with Galax 4, who's rated 160. You might have seen the game that we played yesterday. And what we're doing here is I'm going to do a half-hour game, and I want to introduce an idea. It's not a brand new idea, but I think it's something that if you can hold it in your mind when you play, it'll make a big difference. And it is simply this, that I want you to talk to yourself like you're a mad person, but just tell yourself what you see on the board. All right. Now that's really all it's about. If you think about it, the bottom line, now I need to make a move, otherwise it'll abort the game. So we've got, okay, I'm going to play this move. Now, what do you see? What is on the board? If you think about it, the only difference between you or me or a Grandmaster or Magnus is that we see the board differently, right? Think about it like an expert tracker, right? They'll look at the ground and they'll say, you know, a puma walked over there a couple of hours ago, right? They see things that we don't see, that a normal person doesn't see, because they are not trained and they're not practiced in doing it. So, just send my opponent just talking on video. And the very much the same goes with the chessboard, right? We all play by the same rules. You, I, Magnus, all play by the same rules, okay? The pieces, the rules of chess are very simple, okay? We've all got the 64 squares, we all start with the same amount of material. The game starts in a very inert way, right? It's like any kind of battle, right? But before a battle starts, it's quiet, everyone's lining up their forces. Then there's a battle and it all degenerates into chaos and madness. And then as people get slaughtered, it eventually quietens down again and somebody wins and there's a cheer and that's it, and then you have to pick up all the pieces. Okay, and that's what chess is like. Okay, so we start off very quiet. There's not so much going on at the start. However, it's still very, very important to talk to yourself and tell yourself what you see. So, with my opponent's first move, right, pawn to d4, right, just tell yourself exactly what has changed. So, for example, you know, a master level player, the difference is that they see more, partly because they are more experienced and they see patterns that we don't see. They recognize patterns that we don't recognize, right? But on the other hand, they can also maybe see into the future, right? They say, well, if I do that, then what are they going to do? And if that, then does that work out better or worse for me? And they see further down that path, okay? And you can do that too. And in fact, Stockfish or AlphaZero, or whatever, that's the only way that they work. They don't necessarily know any patterns, but they figure it all out for themselves as they go using an awful lot of computing power. So, with this first move, Queen d4, pawn to d4, moving the queen's pawn. Okay, so what's changed on the board? Well, this pawn is now guarding that square and that square. Okay, the pawn is protected by the queen only. Right, the pawn is no longer protecting that square or that square. Okay, that's another difference, whereas it was before. Okay, this pawn can never protect these squares now, because it's already advanced too far. So it can only ever address these ones, and then, you know, potentially if it captures, it can move out. Okay, so that is the fact of the matter. So I've responded with d5, and now my pawn is looking at these squares, and, you know, likewise exactly the same goes. Also now, my pawn cannot move forward, and neither can his. All right, so now he moves his knight out to here. And what's changed? Well, the knight's no longer protecting that square. The knight is now looking at that square, that square, that square. Right? So it's all changed. Every time a knight moves, it swaps colour and is now looking at a completely different set of squares. So this knight has now developed, and one of the squares it's looking at is my pawn. Now my pawn is defended by my queen. Okay, so just saying the facts. So now I play knight to f6, and now again, likewise, my knight is looking at a bunch of squares, and it's also double defending this pawn. So this pawn is now defended twice and attacked once. Okay, that's the facts of the matter. Now, my opponent plays f3. Now, I know that Freddie the f-pawn also goes by the alias of forget about it pawn, right? Now, one of the things that I see, okay, so Freddie is now looking at this square and this square, okay? That might enable e4 to come, and then e4 might be attacking this pawn, okay, for example. I'll just check he's still there. Yeah. So that might enable this idea. But I also notice that this diagonal to the king is now open, and that may be a weakness that I might be able to exploit, for example. So the other thing is, what is the reason for that move? Well, it might be to push e4. Okay? And then I have to say to myself, well, am I concerned about the possibility of e4? Well, no, not really. Yeah, if he wants to play e4, he can still capture there. Why? Because if e4, he's attacking twice. Let's do those arrows in red, right? And it's defended twice, so that's okay. I know that attacked twice and defended twice is okay, right? And that's just what I see. And I know that from experience because I've figured it out before. So what do we do now? Well, I want to develop my pieces and control more of the board and prevent my opponent's ideas. So here's one idea. To develop my bishop to here, adding a third attacker to there. And that might prevent e4. So let's play that move. Okay, just tell him I'll play quicker now. Okay, so I've developed a piece. My bishop is now looking at these squares, potentially also that one if the pawn should ever move. My bishop is still looking at this diagonal, which is what it was looking at before. And it's also now looking at that square and that square as well. Okay, so that is what has changed on the board. Now, my opponent is now thinking, I hope he's thinking, and I don't think now that e4 is quite as playable. Well, if he does it, it means he's attacking my bishop and he's attacking my pawn. Now, I'm not concerned about him attacking my pawn because I know that my pawn is adequately defended. It's defended twice, right? And it would be attacked twice should this pawn come to here. However, he would also be attacking my bishop. Now, I then need to think, oh, if he does this, could I capture his pawn? Okay, so if that, let's say I capture, let's say the pawn recaptures, okay? Then my bishop is still under threat. But I think I can take back, right? Because I've got how many? 1, 2, 3 pieces all looking at this square, okay? 3 pieces attacking that square. And if he plays this, he's going to have 1, 2 defenders. So I still can actually simply capture that pawn, because if pawn, so let's say pawn comes up here, pawn takes, knight takes. Ooh! Okay, we have action on the board. So what has changed? Well, this pawn has moved from g2 to g4. That means it's no longer protecting that square or that square, and can never either protect that square or that square, because it's advanced. Right? Pawns can't move backwards. Everybody knows this. It's in the rules. The pawn is now attacking my bishop. Okay. Now, a lot of beginners will just immediately say, oh no, my bishop, I have to move it, right? It ain't necessarily true. For example, I might consider the possibility of capturing with my knight. If pawn recaptures, bishop recaptures. And then he's lost 2 key pawns. He's lost the f-pawn and the g-pawn. he's left with an isolated h-pawn, and king e is also still exposed. Okay, so I need to consider that as an option. Another option might be to sacrifice my bishop on c2 and attack the queen, but that's a bit pointless because the queen will simply recapture, developing the queen, getting off the back rank, and I've lost the bishop for a pawn. So I'm going to discount that idea straight away. The other idea is to retreat the bishop, and in that case I have actually 4 options to retreat. Okay, so which one, which is best? Knight takes here, opening up the board. That would leave, let's say knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and my bishop is going to end up on that square. And that would mean that this pawn here is pinned against the queen, so the e-pawn then is not going to be able to move. Another idea could be bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, and then my knight will be on g4. Is that good? I don't know. You have to figure it out. Another idea, just drop the bishop back. And I'm going just to drop the bishop back because I don't see any huge benefit at this point in giving up my bishop, which is worth a nominal 3 points, for 2 pawns which are worth a nominal 1 point each. In addition, they're not central pawns, okay? These pawns tend to be more valuable than these pawns. Somebody described it to me once, was it Tony? Don't know. One of the Tonys. As if these pawns are worth $1 each, right, then these guys are worth 90 cents. Not him, but these ones, right? These are worth 80 cents and these are worth 70 cents, roughly, right? The central pawns are more valuable, so don't get too hung up on this supposed value of pieces. Stockfish and AlphaZero and Leela or whatever don't do that. Now, let's go back to our incessant self-talk, right? What's changed? Well, my opponent just moved his pawn from e2 to e4. Okay, now, this pawn is now attacking this pawn. So this pawn is attacked twice. Once, twice. And it's defended once, twice. So I'm unconcerned about that. I'm not going to lose material, but what you need to think about is, well, is that better for me or worse for me? That's what really matters. Okay, so pawn takes, knight takes, and then he can't take with his knight. Oh, well, he can. It would be an equal trade, okay? Be an equal trade. 2 attackers, 2 defenders, and nothing really lost, nothing really gained. I think it would probably be okay for me. However, another thought is, I have, hang on, 1, 2, 3 attackers now on that pawn, and it's defended only twice. So I think I can go ahead and capture the pawn. Right. Now if he recaptures, I can capture with one of these pieces, and then if the knight captures, boom. So he's actually down a pawn at the end of all of that. And that information was all there to be figured out, right? I'm a 1400 player, and I go 2 attackers, 3 attackers, 2 defenders. It's on, right? That's all I need to do, because I'm a lot more experienced than my opponent is. Your master level players do that almost without having to count, right? Maybe. But they see a lot more patterns, and that's simply a pattern, right? Counting attackers and defenders is, well, you might call it a tactical technique, you might say it's a pattern, but it's all there, okay? It's all there on the board. So we're going to see what he's planning to do here. He might recapture here. If he recaptures with the pawn, then this guy is no longer defended by the pawn, but it is defended by the queen. Right, so that pawn would not be hanging. And you will improve a lot quicker in chess if you use your opponent's time in particular to talk to yourself about what just happened. Okay, describe the board to yourself. Now this is interesting. So now he's pushed g5. So he's ignored this tension. Interesting. He's pushed g5. This pawn is undefended on g5, but it is attacking my knight on f6. So, I have options, right? I could move my knight to here, where it is defended by the bishop. I could move my knight to here, where it's defended only by the rook. I could move my knight to here, where it's defended by my queen. However, if I move my knight here, it's stopping my queen from getting out into the board, which I know is something that she wants to do. And the reason I know that is because I've studied chess, and people say that bringing your pieces out into the board is generally a good thing. So I don't want to do that. Another option I've got is to put my knight on d5. Now, if I put my knight on d5, it's attacked by this knight. However, it's defended by my queen. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my knight there. Okay. Now, that's changed things, because this pawn is now attacking that. Okay, let's just move back. This pawn is now attacked twice, but it's only defended once. So I think a good move here would actually have been f takes e4, because it's there. He's attacked my knight, so what he's doing, this is another tactic, okay? And the more you practice talking tactics to yourself, the more wired your brain will be about that. So with my knight moving here, what has changed on the board? If you're white, well, this pawn was defended twice. Okay, it was defended by knight and bishop, but now it's no longer defended by the knight. It's now defended only once by the bishop, but it's attacked twice. Okay, so that means that white could have simply captured on e4 now. The pawn's defended by the knight, right? And he's attacking my knight again. I think that would have been maybe a better move than knight takes. Okay, now, got options. The obvious move, obviously, is to capture the knight. It's probably what I'm going to do. But I don't have to do that straight away. I can also look at the board. I might think, for example, are there any checks? Is there an in-between move available here? And because we're still in the opening period of the game, because the pieces aren't all out on the board, there's only a few pieces developed, there's only a few pieces that can actually see into the board, right? Not including my dark square bishop, that's still got issues. So there's not actually that many different moving parts right now, but I'm going to go ahead and capture the knight, because otherwise I'm going to run out of time. Okay, so I think, and that was an inaccuracy from white's part there. Also, I'm noticing his pawns are in a state of disarray already. Okay. Now if he captures this pawn, I've got two pieces, look, queen and bishop looking at there. So if pawn captures there, I've got queen captures, and he's in check, right? Now that's not necessarily the end of the world. Right, now what's he done? Okay, so what did he do? He has moved his bishop from f1, is the first part. He's moved his bishop to g2, is the second part. So the fact that the bishop's no longer here means that the bishop is no longer guarding this diagonal. Right? Is that significant? I don't know. I'm just saying the facts. Just saying what I see on the board. Okay? It also means that this pawn is actually attacked once and then twice. Right? Because the bishop is X-ray attacking through there. So, if I take there, then he can recapture either with the queen or with the bishop. Now, if I allow him to capture, I can recapture with my bishop, and I'm probably okay. Then if bishop takes, queen takes, and I've still got check there. Okay, so that means I don't have to recapture. I don't have to initiate the capture. If I capture there, right, and bishop captures, it means my queen is under threat. And my queen's going to have to move. And I would prefer not to have to do that. So why don't we, for example, develop another piece? So like knight to c6. Looks good. That puts two attackers. Oh, shh. Slip. Okay, well, we'll see what happens anyway. I was trying to draw an arrow. Interesting. Oh, are there takebacks in... there's no takebacks, I don't think, on chess.com. I say, don't worry, take it. It's offering to play nice. Okay. Okay, so he's taken it. Now, so, mouse slip. Look, these things happen, right? Anyway, what was I saying? Doesn't really matter now. So what's just happened is that black has blundered his queen, okay? It's an unrated game, it don't matter. Right? Blundered his queen. This pawn is now attacked once, twice, 3 times. Okay? And it's defended only once. So, do I want to capture there? If I capture there, bishop could capture, but then look, if the bishop's there, b7 is under threat. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my knight out to here, and the knight is attacking queenie. And the queen can't really capture that pawn because bishop takes queen. What's more, then if I capture this and bishop recaptures, it's not looking at an undefended pawn, it's looking at a defended knight. However, if bishop takes knight with check, I have to recapture with this pawn. Now it's going to mess up my pawns. So we shall see. We shall see what happens. But first he's got an issue to deal with, which is that his queen is under attack by a knight. He said he had no intention of playing queen d4. Well, you got the queen out of it, mate, so don't worry, you're fine. So now I look at another level of reading the board, which is a kind of interpretation of the board, okay? And that is imbalances. And imbalances is a more advanced kind of approach where we say, okay, well, what's going on the board? What are because the board is uneven, right? Material is uneven because I haven't got a queen anymore and white does. That's an imbalance, a big one, right? There's a material imbalance. But there's also positional imbalances, okay? He's got an awkward pawn here, for example, okay? His king is still in the middle of the board, all right? My king, however, is not in the middle of the board anymore because I've just decided to castle. Okay, now, the queen can't take that pawn because it's defended. Okay, so we can use the basic goldfish method. What's defended? Okay, well, the king's defending that, bishop's defending that, it's defending that. That's defend. You know, you can do this stuff, okay, and show everything that's defending everything. And I can see from this that every one of my pieces has an arrow pointing to it. Therefore, I have a level of coordination, and all is well. So, situation. One thing I don't like is this bishop looking all the way down this diagonal. If this pawn moves forward, then he's going to have a bishop looking at that knight and a queen looking at that knight. And if bishop takes that knight, I have to recapture. I can only recapture currently with that pawn, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play e5 and prevent this pawn from advancing. And I want to make this bishop worse. Okay. So I'm now kind of in the middle game, almost. I haven't quite completed development because I haven't developed this bishop yet. However, what I'm trying to do now is to improve my pieces, all the while looking for tactical opportunities, because you should never ignore that. Okay. So, how do I improve my piece? Well, one idea is to develop my bishop. Okay. Now, if I've brought my bishop to there, it's okay, because it's defended by my knight, okay? So the queen can't really capture it, or else we'd be equalizing material. And that would not be in white's interests. Okay, so another benefit of that is it puts the king in check, okay? And the bishop can't block, I notice, because my rook is guarding the d-file. So if I play this, he can't block with the bishop, because then I've got bishop takes bishop, check again, and I've won myself a bishop. Plus Kingy's going to have to move because my bishop's right in his face and he can't block the check. He's going to have to, do something. So, Mr. Bishop has other ideas. So now, what he's done is prevented my idea of that. So let's come up with another idea. Well, how about centralizing my knight? That's one idea. This pawn's defended only once, but I kind of like that pawn being there. That pawn's actually helping me because it's making this guy look stupid. So I'm quite happy about that. This pawn is defended by the bishop, so let's goldfish. Let's goldfish for white. Okay, queen's defending that. Brr, brr, undefended. Right, this guy's undefended. The rook's defending that, and I think that's more or less it. Queen's defending also this and this. Okay, so from this you can see things that are defended only once. So should we put them in like blue? Okay, that's only defended once. That's only defended once. That's only defended once. Right. That's another interesting way to go about it. This is defended twice. So, what do we see from this? What does the board tell us? Read the bones. Well, let's... Okay, I'm just going to centralize my knight. So now my knight's looking at this pawn, which we've already established is only defended once. Now, if I can get this queen to move, then my knight can capture that pawn. And if my knight captures that pawn, we have a check and a fork on the rook, which would be very nice. So how can I get the queen to move? Ooh, I've just undefended something, haven't I? Look at that. Moving my knight, I've undefended this pawn. Okay, I'm going to move my knight back now. He didn't see it, right? Why didn't he see it? He didn't see it because he didn't completely tell himself the story of what just happened. Okay, so the knight moved from here. Okay, what was the knight doing there? Well, it was looking at these squares. Okay, what squares was the knight controlling? It was controlling those. When the knight moved, it's no longer controlling those squares, right? And this pawn was therefore undefended, hanging, you see. Now, what's just changed here? Well, the knight has moved from that square. That's not very meaningful, okay? But it's moved to this square. And what does that mean? Well, one thing I see it means this pawn is now undefended. It was defended by the bishop, look. But since the knight moved there, suddenly the pawn's not defended. So let's grab that pawn, right? We're playing for fun here, okay? Let's grab the pawn because it's undefended. I've just earned myself a pawn. Okay, now, white castles. Okay, now when a castling happens, a lot of things actually change, okay? So, the king was here guarding these squares. Is that significant? Maybe not, right? The bishop had two defenders, and after this it still has three defenders actually now, so it's actually got more defenders, right? It's got three defenders. The king has moved to here. It also means the king can no longer castle. What's more, the rook has moved from here, where it was defending only that, to here, where it is defending the bishop, okay? Also on this semi-open file. So, what does this tell us? I'm just going to play a move. I'm going to play my bishop out to here, just on general principle. One benefit is I connect my rooks, so now my rooks are defending each other. Another thing is it's blocking this diagonal just a bit more. I want to avoid ideas of this bishop coming out, you know, maybe with a threat. If my king found itself on a dark square, for example, there might be ideas of a back discovery. So I just want to neutralize those ideas, the potential of that kind of threat. Okay, and that really is something that stronger players do a lot better than weaker players, is lining up your pieces not for an immediate tactical idea necessarily, but to either facilitate or prevent the possibility of certain ideas in the future. And that's what positional play is about. Okay, so let's just goldfish again. There's also the potential of discoveries here, but this knight, I know... Ooh! My bishop is hanging. My bishop is hanging. You see, if we goldfish, that's goldfish, right? Goldfish for me. Then that's defending. That's defending. That's defending that. Bishop's defending the knight. Rook's defending that. That's currently undefended. That's currently undefended, and that is currently undefended because it has no incoming arrows. So white now has the possibility of capturing my bishop. How long has that been hanging? Ah, see, I made a mistake, didn't I? Did you see that? I didn't see it. Ha! Okay, interesting. So white missed a hanging piece. Okay, he spotted the queen earlier on. That was a good job, right? Now I have an issue because the bishop has moved from here to here, and because it's moved to there, I'm in check. So all the red lights are flashing in the black camp. Okay, I'm in check. I have to get out of check on the next move. That's the law. Now, what I see here, yeah, I mean, I could block with my bishop, but then bishop takes bishop, and I'm still in check, so I've just thrown away a bishop. How about f5, though? If f5 is played, I'm doing two things at once. I'm blocking this check, hooray, and I'm defending this bishop, hurrah! Right? Now, so I'm going to play that, because I'm down to 9 minutes, right? Now, white has an option here of actually capturing my pawn en passant, and then our pawn disappears, and then I'm in check again. Okay? But we're just going to see whether white knows that rule. Okay? So he has g takes f6 is an option. So if you don't know the en passant rule, if you have a pawn on the 5th rank if you're white, or 4th rank if you're black, but from black's perspective, you've got a pawn on there, and a pawn makes 2 moves, jumps 2 squares from its starting square to the 4th rank, 5th rank. You can capture it on the way past, but only with a pawn. Pieces can't do that, only pawns can do that. Okay? So now if bishop takes pawn, I recapture, I grab the bishop, and actually I'm winning there. What he should do is capture en passant, this pawn disappears, king's in check, right? And what's more, this bishop is hanging again. So what I would love to do now is capture that knight, because I see if I capture that knight, the knight is undefended. Right? Why is the knight undefended? Because the bishop moved here. So you can see what we're talking about, right? Every time a piece moves, there are changes, right? Every time a piece moves, it means that there are squares that it was looking at, that it's no longer looking at. Okay, now this is a big mistake for my opponent. Okay, now he's got 2 attackers on here, but they're both higher value than a bishop. However, this pawn can't actually capture there. So another option that he actually had here would have been queen takes bishop, because the pawn can't capture, because if the pawn captured, I'd be in check. Right? So you have to, that's the kind of thing you can tell yourself. Okay, you have to say, right, okay, so he's put his pawn there. So let's say you're white, right? Okay, he's put his pawn here, blocking the check. But when you block a check with a piece, you also pin a piece. You pin it. So I'm not going to mess around here. I'm going to capture that knight and attack this rook. Right? Why? Because the knight was hanging, my bishop was attacked, and my bishop's only defender was itself pinned and couldn't defend. Therefore, my bishop was not defended. And when you get into the habit, you say this over and over again. You say this stuff enough times. Okay, he's grabbed a pawn and put me in check. Okay, options. Can I block? Yeah, with a rook. Nee, don't really like that idea. Okay, so I'm just going to move my king. There are only 2 actually legal moves. Rook d7 or king b8. I didn't like rook b7, so I played king b8. It's added another defender to this pawn. Okay, I'm just saying the stuff that is on the board. Also, I notice this rook is blocked in. Can't move. Look. So what can he do about that? Am I going to get myself a rook for my trouble? That'd be cool. That'd be super cool. Oh, he said, oops, I meant rook f1. Ah. Oh dear. Well, we all blunder, so we both have slipped up then. Smiley face. Okay, I'm going to grab the free material because that's the way that we are playing. We're playing competition. All right. And now, so in terms of material, my opponent is actually up 3 pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, I'm actually up in pawns. I have 6 pawns to his 5. But I have an extra rook, but he has an extra queen. Interesting. Okay, so reading the board, let's move a bit quicker now, okay? Rook's attacking, that's defended twice. No worries. Bishop's attacking that. It's currently defended by the rook, which means that if this rook moves, the bishop could capture the pawn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play g6, blocking this undefended pawn with a defended pawn, also attacking the bishop. Therefore, my rook can now move. My rook kind of wants to come to here. Why does it want to come there? Well, it's an open file, and that means lots of squares. Lots of nice, juicy squares for my pieces to control. And control of the board is a good thing in general. The more squares that your pieces control, the fewer options your opponent has. So if my opponent wants to move his queen here, that wouldn't be a good idea because I've got 2 pieces guarding that square, right? Just for example. Now, if you leave all your pieces at home, up down here, you're not guarding very many squares on the board. So your opponent is going to dominate you. Your opponent has many more choices and options. Okay, so this bishop now really ought to move. Doesn't have to. White may decide that actually there's some kind of... Okay. Well, I'm going to grab me a bishop. Simple as that. He should have just moved it away, I think, but... You know, he's rated 160, so that's okay. We're not judging here. So the game is now actually quite finely balanced. Another issue is that I've got only 7 minutes on my clock and my opponent's got 16. So he's got 16 more minutes to talk to himself like a nutcase. Talk to yourself like a nutter, mate, like a madman. Oi, nutter. Now, something else I see, you know. Okay. Don't understand that move, right? There was a hanging pawn. He could have just grabbed it. So, I've got ideas, right? One thing I see, I was just about to say, is that I've got a rook in line with white's king. Yes, interesting. Yes. Okay, I'm just going to push this pawn forward. A couple of reasons. One, it protects the pawn because it was hanging where it was. Now it's protected by its buddy, Eddie. Okay. Another thing is that pushing this pawn onto a dark square guards this square. And whitey here only has a dark squared bishop, as do I. Okay? But it means he can't put his bishop on that square. I can put my bishop on that square. Yes, I can indeed. Okay, so I'm going to slip my bishop back, and this does a few things. Okay, one. Okay, first thing, it's no longer attacked by his pawn. Second thing, it's attacking g5. Now, g5 is out on his own in the cold, okay? Now, he does have the option of playing h4 to defend it, right? But a third thing, which is very interesting indeed, is that this bishop is now pinned. You see? And that was what I was looking at before. Because my rook was in line with his king, I thought, well, that creates possibilities. So now I'm going to play my knight to here. I'm attacking the queen. That's all I'm doing really right now. I'm also moving my knight into the very centre of the board. Knights love to be in the centre of the board. Yeah, when a knight is in this area, it's looking at its maximum number of 8 possible squares. Okay, right, now. Is there any immediate threat? No, particularly. I'd love to put my knight on that square. Ooh, can you see? Let's say I move my knight to this square, okay? Now, see, because I see a pattern. here. Right, I'm just going to move my knight there for now, okay, because the clock's ticking. I see a pattern, and the pattern is knight on here, right? In fact, the first pattern is king and rook are 2 squares apart in line, right? Not in diagonal, but they're in horizontal or vertical line, right? If you've got 2 pieces in that formation, right, then a knight can attack both of them at once. It's not the only formation. Like if the king was here and the knight was here, it could attack them both, right? For example. Now, so the other thing I notice is that can my knight go to that square? Well, that square is guarded by the bishop, but actually it isn't. Why? Because of the pattern that I mentioned previously. So I'm going to put my knight in there. Dogs are getting excited because we're going out for a walk today. It's actually mine and Sally's 5th wedding anniversary tomorrow, but she's at work. She's at work, so we're going to go mushroom hunting. Sorry about the dogs. There was great excitement all around the land on the day of the big walk. Okay, so that's an interesting tactic. So I spotted that, right? That was what this 2-move combination was for. Okay, so now the rook hangs and the rook falls. Now also, I immediately see the bishop is attacked twice and defended twice. Okay, so what's he doing here? What are you doing, Galax 4? I could capture the bishop either with the knight or the rook, but I have to consider this move as well. I'm just going to push b6 because that pawn was attacked and it was defended only by the king. And what that means is, should the queen come in and capture it, that's a defended queen, the king can't take the queen, and he's moved his bishop out of the way. Okay, fair enough. I get that. Now I notice, look, you remember the pattern we talked about earlier? It's still there. Okay, I'm going to put my knight here and see if he notices. The dogs are getting really excited now. Okay, see if he notices. So what he should do now is probably capture the knight, or move either the king or the queen, right? Again, same pattern. 2 squares apart in a straight line, okay? Which means that if my knight comes here, I'm attacking both king and queen. Right? Does he see it? It's there. It's there to be seen, right? It's just a matter of practicing reading the chessboard. Okay, I'm going to go in for the kill now because the dogs are desperate to go out for their walk. Okay, and now we have a royal fork, as it's called, king and queen, and falls. Undefended pawn. Let's grab it. Okay, and this is all it is. There's no, this isn't rocket science, and this isn't me being cleverer than my opponent. This is me being more familiar with the patterns on the board than my opponent is. Nothing more than that. Okay, so now we're in the ending because the queens are off the board, and what we do in the ending is we say, okay, what needs to happen to get the best possible result? Best possible result here is a win for black, for sure. I'm not going for a draw here. Okay, and so therefore how do I win? Now, my rook is on this open file, which means that this king, for as long as that file is open, that king, he can't go into here because he'd be in check. On any of these squares, he'd be in check, and he can't move into check. So that's not even possible. So now my plan is this: attack the bishop. If the bishop moves, right, that's fine. Okay, so he's attacking a pawn, which is defended. No worries. Okay. And now actually pawn here comes with discovered check as well. Right? Am I a genius? No. It's there, look. If this pawn moves, bishop's attacking the king. King's in check. Has to move. Now the king's in check. Right, I didn't move the pawn forward. I captured there. Same deal. King's in check. King's going to have to move. Where can he move? 1, 2, 3 squares. Let's get a queen. I know he's not in stalemate because he's got pawns that can move forward. Yep. It says that happened quickly. This is very useful stuff. All right, now want to finish off the game as quickly as possible. My bishop is looking at this square. Therefore, my queen can go there, deliver check. Okay. And the king now has only 2 squares to go to. That's one, that's the other. I'm going to move my pawn forward to guard these 2 squares. Okay. Now the king actually only has 1 square. Alright, now I can give check with the queen here. I can give check with the queen here. Let's do this one. King has to go there or there. Alright. Now I think check with a rook and we are about done for the day. There we go. All over. Yep. Because so here, one of the other things I'm looking at is, okay, from here, I'd say good game. Okay, so from here, this position, here's another thing that you can tell yourself, okay? And this is what great thing about playing online, because you can get to colour the board in as you go. Right? Everyone likes a bit of colouring. So my queen is here, so my queen's guarding, right, all of these points of the compass, okay? That means my queen is guarding that square, that square, that square. Okay, and my bishop is guarding these squares. And the pawn, remember, is guarding that one. So in actual fact, the king has no squares, and he can't move on to his own piece. No squares. So all I need to do now is give check. Okay, and I see that rook here gives check. Equals checkmate. The king has no squares to go to, can't get out of check, end of the game. You're very welcome. Okay, so there we go. End of the game. I need to go and take my dogs out mushroom hunting, and I hope that's been really, really useful for you. I think it, you know, this approach, this idea, just the basic concept of talking to yourself about what's on the board is so valuable at the beginner level. But you know, for me as well, I've got a lot out of working through this process too. If you do that, and obviously you have to play longer time controls to give yourself time to do it, and you know, as the lower your rating, the lower your experience, the more time you will need. But trust me, it's just practice, pattern recognition, repetition. You're building new pathways in your brain. It will happen. I guarantee it 100%. That is how you get better at chess. Enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.